Your first one. We're just now less than a month out as they're one of the last big tech names to report, but you've got the monster here, Nvidia.
Yeah, and Nvidia is one. I would see everything right now is really more a flight to quality. People are looking for conviction, people are looking for certainty, and Nvidia is one of these names that we see that happening. We're looking for a 10 to 14% growth in an 18-month time period. We see a near-term consolidation in the industry. We see that pullback of sorts. Same thing across the sector. We believe that there's still decent growth available. So that's another positive for this stock. Also, that the fact that they've gone through the pricing pressures per se has been a boon to them. So we believe that the stock has room to run this year. We should see a nice double-digit increase. And then at the same time, although there be challenges, we think that they should do well in the long term.
All right, Rick, so as we look at the technical setup for Nvidia, we did see this rotation away from big tech, but over the last month, we've seen some movement back in. Nvidia itself up more than 16%. But what are you seeing in terms of the technical setup?
Yes, we bounced off a very notable point. The area between about 165 to 170 represented a gap here and a subsequent short-term low. But then very often this general area has come back into focus. Most recently, it's about where we bottomed out. We filled the gap, and now we have had a rally that took us above 195. That's our green line here. Highs, and then kind of a similar picture here. So we had this range-bound area. Now the price activity is close to challenging this very small gap right here. That gap level came in around 205 or so. Then the next stop for the bulls would be 212.19. So a pretty interesting situation. We did break through this boundary line here. You could draw just this trajectory line, not really a very strong trend line, just trying to illustrate that we are seeing higher highs at this point. Now we can see that RSI, despite being above the overbought threshold of 70, has broken. This green trend line is on the verge of potentially drifting back below. So that would be more of a bearish type of signal here if that were to happen, especially if we were to break down through the confluence of our 5-day EMA and our trend line. Both of those come together just shy of 200. Still, though, that doesn't necessarily mean a collapse is coming. It could just be a slowdown as traders reassess, take profits, and examine their current positions and perhaps try to re-enter. So anyway, we can look at our volume profile here showing our node in question, 175 to 190, with our point of control, our heaviest trading area of all, coming in around 179. So that's the key area to look out for, mostly matching up with our long range.
You manage portfolios. You don't have to tell people what your year-end target is on the S&P, do you? You don't have to do that.
Crazy.
Do you have to do? You don't have to do that, do you?
No.
What do you have a feeling that we're at the highs and headed down from here, or?
The market's pivoting, Joe, between the micro, which is good, earnings revision. It's one of the best years I remember for earnings revisions, which is really powerful. And the macro, which is, you fill in the Iran war, AI disruption, private credit, and the worries of how that's going to affect earnings. And you had a 9% decline, and I said, hey, we should be focused on earnings revision. Now you've had a 12% rally, and the market's more focused on the macro.
So then what matters?
So what matters is
we always, and I used to make fun of it because we supposedly were going to do that on one of our primetime shows. Yeah. We were going to get rid of the signal, or what were we doing? We were getting rid of the noise and keeping the signal, or we were doing something. So what's noise and what's signal? I would think that if you assign a multiple to earnings per share, that you can come to a number and ignore a lot of the
So here's a simple
things
metric,
that don't
Joe.
matter.
At the end of this year, we're going to be focused on next year.
Is that like the end of the day?
You asked me price targets.
At the end of this year,
at the end of this year, right now, the number for next year, which is all that matters, forward earnings, is 375. That's consensus. That's up from 357.
Okay.
That's a big move, right?
And if rates don't come down, then what multiple do you get?
I think 20 multiples reasonable.
20 times.
Yeah, so that's pretty reasonable. Now, at 6,300, where the market was a couple weeks ago, that's a lot. Now at 7,100, market seems overbought. So I think we're just pivoting between the micro and the macro. But at the end of the day, the micro is pretty good. And so if you get a washout because of the macro, geopolitics tends to create good buying opportunities.
20 is not expensive. So 20 times 375, that's what you're saying?
375, yeah.
So that's 75.
But that's current
7,500.
numbers.
Right.
That's current numbers, and that's already up $18 from the beginning of the year.
And 20 is not expensive for a market.
So it seems pretty, but look, we've had a big rally. The market seems overbought, and now you're seeing these companies come out the last couple of days, and they're reporting good numbers, but they're saying, well, we don't know about the macro, and the market's getting nervous.
When you saw the war or excursion, whatever you want to call it, in the sell-off, which was similar to Liberation Day, when you saw 13 straight up days in the NASDAQ, were you expecting that?
I think muscle memory is really important. And last year, a lot of people pivoted and turned negative, and they sold stocks. And I think what happened this year is we're not going to make that mistake again. And we got a lot of calls from people saying, hey, when's the time to buy? I don't want to make the mistake I made last year. So it doesn't surprise me we didn't have the magnitude of the sell-off. And people wanted to buy the dip. They wanted to buy the dip because last year was a great opportunity. They missed it. So I don't think we're going to get a big decline again because it would have been a repeat of last year. Too many people have egg on their faces by pivoting last year to see a real pivot.
You actually mentioned AI as one of the headwinds as far as AI disruption. A lot of people think the only reason we're moving higher is because of the benefits down the road for AI. Or just to build out the capital spending.
I don't agree with that, Joe, because no one's raising numbers because of savings because of AI. They're raising numbers.
They're raising numbers on CapEx from the big companies.
That's true, but the big companies haven't seen the return yet, right? So their numbers aren't going up, and that's what drives the S&P. That's to come. But if you look at all technological innovation, the market focuses on the losers first. And then it focuses on, oh, wait, this is margin profitability. I was around the mid-'90s. We all focused on, bad for the newspapers, bad for the publishers, bad for the books, right? And then ultimately, later into the '90s, oh, wait, a lot of companies are going to be a lot more profitable. And that's why the S&P doubled in the late '90s before the dot-com bubble.
At this point,
Alec, you say in challenging times, if you wait for the all clear, you often miss out. So have investors missed out?
Well, I think there's definitely still some exciting upside moving forward, but clearly the market bottomed on March 30th. So investors that are buying today have definitely missed out relative to those that were wise enough to buy, before it was clearer that we were probably past the worst situation in the Middle East. You definitely want to be buying while there's still some uncertainty. It's not easy to do, but historically, stocks bottom before conflicts tend to end. The market will look ahead and say, okay, the path to peace isn't perfect. It's not linear, but we've likely seen the worst. And stocks begin to rebound. We think we're in that setup today.
Okay, so we're in that setup today. Is too much optimism already priced in? Because, listen, we don't have a conclusion to the conflict in the Middle East. Yes, there's been an extension of the truce, right? But there's no definitive timeline on that yet. Is the worst behind us?
I think the worst is behind us because things were much worse when we were bombing them every day, a few weeks ago. So it's not about good or bad in the market. It's about better or worse. And so relative to where we were, we think we're going to continue to have some nasty headlines, but and we may see some backing and filling in the S&P 500, but we think the lows are in. And I'm happy to talk about some of the bullish fundamental drivers that I think can keep the market moving higher through the end of the year.
What are the fundamental drivers that you see, Alec?
Sure. Well, we're actually just getting into the heart of earnings season right now. But the interesting thing is that since this war began, since the beginning of the year, we've seen volatility in markets, especially in the tech sector. We've seen a big drop in valuations there. Even after the rebound, tech's trading around 23 times. It was close to 30 at its peak last fall. But the earnings trajectory for the S&P has continued to be revised higher throughout this entire period. And a lot of that is coming from AI infrastructure stocks in the tech space, as well as industrials, materials, So we're seeing the fundamental picture improving. If we look at 12-month forward earnings growth for the S&P 500, it's been revised up to 25%. The long-term 20-year average for that data point is around 7.5%. So earnings are growing about 3 times faster than they normally do. Analysts keep revising the trend higher. We're starting off the earnings season. We've got about 10% of the companies reporting, but we think this is going to be another really strong season. Guidance may be a bit muted because of what's going on in Iran, but that's to be expected. As that situation gets resolved, the full nature of the fundamentals kick back in. But I think that's really the fundamentals here. The earnings momentum is really what's starting to drive the market. Instead of geopolitics. That's still a factor, but it's not the prime factor. A month ago, geopolitics was the primary thing driving the stock market.
And I think now it's retail investors that are now beginning to take money off the sidelines and buy stocks.
Maybe this is a psychological or a political question. I'm just curious if you have any insight as to why they would react differently to the Iran war versus not just tariffs, but anything else politically that's happened. I mean, buy the dips has become a well-known catchphrase. So it's surprising that they were, you think, kind of going the other way this time.
It is surprising. I was quite surprised because I would have assumed if someone asked me in 2026, a war is going to start, what will retail do? I would assume that they'd buy the dip. But in our surveys with our clients, we found that many maybe had policy puzzlement. They didn't really know how big this war could become. Their biggest fear was gasoline spiking and we could get a recession or a depression, and a lot of economists warned of that. So I think it was difficult for investors to say, we can trust what the administration's doing because there were too many people warning about the tail risks of that.
Is it possible they're right? I was in a store earlier today and the radio was on. I haven't heard the radio in a long time. And the DJ it was some kind of pop or kind of broad station. And he was saying, another check on gasoline prices, and boy, aren't they high? And I thought, wow, that's the first time I've heard gasoline prices talked about in a non-business news context in a while. Is it possible that actually there is going to be a bigger impact here and the retail investors actually know that and maybe the pros are missing it?
Anything's definitely possible. One thing that we were at Fundstrat were emphasizing is that inflation adjusted, even gasoline prices here aren't nearly the burden they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even at the 2008 peak. And the war is stimulating the economy, and we can see that in the earnings estimates, in the ISM, and even the jobs report. So I think the state of the consumer is one thing versus maybe how they might hear in a radio commercial or the surveys, but I do think the consumer is in better shape. So I think the retail investor will end up chasing this stock rally.
And you think as they do, that will power it higher?
Yes, but for the right fundamental reasons, because earnings estimates are higher. The U.S.'s relative position has really been strengthened by what's been exposed by supply chains through this war. And I think as the world investor looks for growth and they worry about growth in general, they're going to buy the U.S. stock market, which is a growth index.
We're going to talk in just a moment about international and whether, you should, not that you have to choose, you can do both, but if you had to pick U.S. versus international, is it U.S.?
I'd still be overweighting U.S. because I think if you think about where innovation comes from, whether it's in tech, healthcare, or financial services or fintech, that's really U.S. companies. And I think there was an argument the U.S. PE should derate, but the war has exposed that the U.S. multiple should be going up.
Really? So that could be accounting. We could get both earnings and multiple expansion this year?
Yes, I think once we're through, this is still going to be a very tricky year because we have a new Fed chair coming in the market's going to test that Fed chair. But once we get through that subsequent turbulence, we are probably entering, an 18 to 24-month period that might.
When we think about the earnings picture and where you see potential path for opportunities here, is it all about the Mag 7 or are we looking at AI infrastructure, the next tier?
I think we're looking at AI infrastructure, and that includes some of the Mag 7, the hyperscalers, some Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon. Apple's not as much of an AI play at the moment. We also like that one. But it's really tech more broadly. There's a lot of great stuff happening and a lot of fundamental momentum in the semiconductor space. One thing we are seeing, though, with companies in industrials like we had Raytheon, RTX, and GE post great numbers yesterday. Stocks got hit. So a lot of areas are very expensive. That's not the case in tech. So I think from an earnings season standpoint, tech is a great opportunity because that's where the earnings momentum is, but the valuations have been hit. So we may see some more positive reactions to good earnings news. What we're seeing with areas like industrials, the numbers are great, but the stocks sell off because industrials are trading relatively rich. They're not down much from their peak valuations. Tech has really seen a big reset, and it's ironic because that's where the best growth is. So we think that's where the biggest opportunity is for this particular earnings season here in Q1.
Alec, let me ask you this. A part of your base case for your bullish views is also about the Fed, right? And you see the Fed easing later this year. When I look at the CME Fed Watch tool, it doesn't really look very likely. What gives you the confidence that rate cuts are on the table? Even you got Kevin Warsh's testimony yesterday that didn't signal that.
Right. Well, everyone knows the president wants rate cuts. And so if Warsh had done that, he would have played into the sock puppet narrative that some of the Democrats were trying to portray. I wouldn't read too much into what he did or didn't say yesterday in front of the Congress, but our base case is that the war ends, energy prices cool, Fed cuts rates. So Warsh definitely has a more dovish predisposition than his predecessor, and I think once this war-related energy inflation risk recedes, he'll be more free to cut rates. We're only looking for one. I think the market's pricing in about a one out of 3 chance of a rate cut this year. So a view is definitely out of consensus, but that's generally how you make money if you can get those right. So we're comfortable with the call, but it's really based on the war winding down. On the flip side, I will say a major risk to the AI infrastructure trade is if the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked indefinitely. Eventually, that's going to affect semiconductor production in Asia because those countries are the most sensitive to what's going on in the Strait. They get more of their energy from the Strait than Europe or the U.S. So we definitely need to get that situation resolved, but our base case is that that'll happen.